In 1988, Robert Zemeckis released a film about cartoon characters, but this was not a light-hearted children's film like those seen of the time. This was a story of murder, adapted from Gary K. Wolfe's book Who Censored Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is set in a world where cartoon characters, or toons, and human beings live side by side. The film follows a toon-hating detective who is roped into a murder case where he must prove the innocence of the cartoon superstar Roger Rabbit. The film employed a new style of living animation. This meant there were scenes where toons would interact with real-world items and live-action characters would interact with cartoon items. The filmmakers employed advanced techniques and special effects that created the illusion of such interactions. I believe that props were a major part of Who Framed Roger Rabbit's mise-en-scène and arguably created some of the most iconic cinematic moments in the film. So, today I will be discussing how crucial were the props of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in bringing cartoons into the real world. Putting the toons into the film involved a painstaking rotoscoping process, animating the characters and overlaying them on the live action footage. But simply drawing a character into a scene would not provide the look that would make the audience believe they were in the shot with an actor. Interaction is the key. At the beginning of the film, Bob Hoskins' character Eddie Valiant, a private detective, is hired to dig up dirt on Roger Rabbit's wife, Jessica Rabbit. To do so, he visits a private club where Jessica sings, the Ink and Paint Club. Inside the club, we meet their several toon employees, including 2 cartoon ducks playing piano. Donald and Daffy Duck's dueling pianos incorporated a mixture of puppeteering and mechanical devices to show the pair's cartoon antics. The pianos included a mechanism enabling the piano keys to move by themselves, and the stalls were puppeteered by strings to show the intense playing of the 2 ducks. To convince the audience that cartoons existed in the real world, they needed to see them interacting with real objects and the objects reacting to them. So when in the script a cartoon duck fires a cannonball through a piano, the results of this would need to happen on set. The physical effects department designed numerous rigs and employed several practical effects techniques, all to create the realism of Donald and Daffy interacting with the pianos. Now narratively, these props were used instrumentally, that being those objects displayed and used according to their common function. But due to the caricature subject of the film, this was not the only way props were physically utilized. Contextualized props, for example, acquire meaning through their changing place in a narrative. This is how Roger's love letter was used. We first see this prop when Roger visits Valiant after the murder of Marvin Acme, the owner of Toontown and the Acme factory, but at this time we are led to believe it is a blank piece of paper which Roger wrote a love letter to his wife on. But at the end of the film, it is revealed to be the missing will of Marvin Acme, with Acme's disappearing, reappearing ink, something we were introduced to in the Ink and Paint Club. Without the will, which was said to leave Toontown to the Toons, the property would be sold to the highest bidder. This is a literal change in the prop's purpose, where it was once considered a throwaway gag, later to be revealed as a major plot device to the narrative. Now, physical props being used to reveal major points in the narrative is a common trend in this film. Practical effects are utilized in the final scenes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit to completely change the audience's perception of a character. The final scene sees Eddie Valiant facing off against Judge Doom, played by Christopher Lloyd. After a close call with a steamroller, a giant magnet, and a pot of glue, it is Judge Doom that gets crushed by the steamroller. But it's not the end. As the roller moves off of the judge's flattened body, he stands up, his body comically limp. The judge reinflates himself by breathing in a tank of gas. The viewer sees him do this through practical effects. A puppet of the judge's hand wraps around the handle of the canister. A latex balloon shaped like the head of Christopher Lloyd inflates, and false feet shape back in place. These effects show a very toon-like motif, a very inhuman thing to do. It breaks the audience's perception of the judge, who has previously appeared human, but is revealed instead to be a red-eyed toon in a rubber mask. Where previously we saw toons merely existing in the real world, this is an example of a toon embracing and hoodwinking the real world. It disturbs the thought process of the viewer. Of course, cartoons cannot exist in the real world. However, the way certain practical effects are utilized create the illusion that these characters can exist. By showing how they interact with the real world, suspends our disbelief. The use of props in this film was carefully planned for each specific moment to gain a specific response from the audience. When considering the editorial and directorial decisions to use these interactive cartoon real-world devices in this particularly successful film, a short piece of dialogue sums up the reason for its effectiveness. Because you can't just do things at any time.
Only when it was funny. your sense of humor?